everybody. Happy StatsCast National Bat Speed Day.
I'd be at the top of that list, Jeff, if I were still playing.
StatsCast folks have given us another measurement that allows your front office to tell you that despite the fact your team sucks, the best player is actually still pretty good.
You can hear the sound. So
Hear it all
quick.
right. Guy said in Twitter,
nice.
It's like khaki Christmas.
Oh,
It is.
boy. They're on their Schwins right now, having trouble holding them up.
A lot of excited.
Oh, man.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
The last time the khakis got this excited, they were putting episodes of Gilligan's Island on YouTube. So,
Yeah, it's okay to hit 200.
it's Blair
Jeff.
and Barker for a Monday. Optimistic Monday, because with 3 games against the Orioles followed by 3 against the Rays, there may not be much of a chance for optimism over the next week. So I thought I'd start. Come on, Jeff, you're overselling it. I thought I'd start today, Kevin, by, we'll look back at the weekend before we look ahead to the Orioles. The Jays lost 2 of 3 to the Minnesota Twins, but they scored a crap ton of runs and had a big comeback on Saturday. Most hits, most runs this year. And then they lost 5-1 on Sunday with George Springer working his magic at the top of the order. And, I'm just saying.
I thought you were being nice.
I am being nice.
Jeez.
The biggest thing to me out of that game was Alex Manoah, I think, taking a step forward against a lineup that had, 4 lefties, 2 switch hitters. Looked a little more like himself. We saw him, the back and forth with Ernie Clement after the 2 errors. I understand I'm searching for,
Hey, you're begging.
I don't know, 55 of 78 pitches for strikes, 16 of 26 first pitch Ks, 19 changeups. I mean, he threw more changeups than he did against Washington. I would guess it was because he used the changeup when they're expecting sliders. I don't know. But, I mean, again, all the Jays need Alek Manoah to do is be the number
7 scoreless.
Number 5.
That's what they need. When you have limited offensive skills and for whatever reason take your leadoff hitter that was really good the day before and move him down in the order.
He didn't. All right. So he didn't give him 7 scoreless. He didn't give him 7 scoreless.
That's how they're going to get back into this.
Come on. You can't tell me that yesterday that you didn't feel better about Alek Manoah's next start after yesterday's performance compared to what you felt about yesterday's start after his previous performance.
I'll say it, and I'll continue to say it. It has where they're at in the standings has nothing to do with their starting pitching, and you can throw Alek Manoah in that mix. Look, I think the obvious thing that you noticed, or I noticed yesterday, was the target was bigger. Like why would I set up 3 inches in off the plate against a left-handed hitter? All of a sudden, now it's 1-0. Instead of Kirky setting up away, outer third, target's really big. That way, if he misses, at least it's strike 1 instead of ball 1. I'm a better pitcher if it's strike 1 and I'm ahead in the count. It's called swing counts, right? You put the hitter on the defense, and if you're aiming smaller, it's harder to get that thing in there because all the time Alek is not mechanically sound, right? So what do? If you're Pete Walker, you make the target bigger, give him something bigger to aim at, which will allow him to at least keep it in the zone, get ahead. We saw the fastball had a little late giddy up to it. He was located. He was aiming outer third instead of on the black. The sliders were good enough. He could back foot them. He could backdoor them. He had a couple there that were looking like slow breaking balls. The changeup arm speed was really good. It was just enough difference to get some swing and misses. He was unpredictable with it, right? Fastball counts, you throw a changeup. Slider counts, you throw a changeup. Lefty's sort of looking right. The changeup doesn't throw it all the time. Why would I even look for it? Now he's throwing it. It helps when he's ahead and he's throwing harder. You can tell he had a ton of confidence. He's very efficient. I mean, the lack of pitches that he threw, what he had? First 4 innings, he gave up 1 hit, 1 walk, 4 Ks. Lefties 1 for 8, 43 pitches, had 13 batters.
Got a couple of double plays.
There you go. Bing, bang, boom, right? Yeah. You're doing things now because it's that time of the year, and he's been gone long enough, I think, to be able to self-correct on the mound. He threw a couple that he knew right away wasn't the right way mechanically. You get it back in the zone. You aim big, right, Kirky? Get big back there. The bigger you are, just allows him to, when he does miss, it's not as fine. He's not falling behind as much, and just allows his stuff to play. That's what you're trying to do. Are you asking him to do what he did yesterday? Probably not. But somewhere similar to this.
Yeah,
now you got a blueprint to build off of. You got some confidence. Now you know your stuff will play if you're just aiming at the right spot. So, yeah, you like that. And then, you just sort of look at the lineup and you scratch your head. It's befuddling. It really is befuddling.
Okay, let's move on to that. But let's – okay, well, I want to talk about the bullpen as well. But let's move on to the lineup because obviously that was until Alek Manoah did what he did, the lineup was the biggest talking point. George Springer, after a couple of days off with an illness, was back in the leadoff spot, 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. Davis Schneider, who was in the leadoff spot Saturday and very much a part of that offensive outburst that saw the Jays come back from a 7-1
3 for 4, 7 total bases, 1 double, 1 homer, 2 RBIs.
He was moved down into the 5-hole. Now,
perfect sense.
Well, a couple of things here. First of all, based on his at-bats against Bailey Ober, I'm not certain Davis Schneider leading off would have given you anything.
What? look again.
I have that's all I'm saying. I'm saying there has to be a reason the move was made other than the fact that nobody wants to hurt old George's feelings.
Well, it seems like it's more about hurting old George's feelings than doing what's right for the team. And what's right for the team is you had the best offensive day of your entire season. The day before that, when you had 16 hits, scored 10 runs, came back from there's even another reason. Why is he not DHing? You have to get Vogelbach in there, who's 3 for 31 on the season. Like, there's just some things sometimes that it's mind-boggling. Like offensively, some of the skills that you have are just not there. And when you can gain momentum off of one game to the next by a certain way that you're, constructing the lineup, why mix it up?
Momentum is only as good as the next day's starter.
Yeah,
If Bailey Ober's good, your momentum is. It doesn't matter. If he shoves, it doesn't matter what you did the day before. I'm not saying that I wasn't surprised when I saw the lineup. I was. I was interested in where they were going to put Springer. I thought put him 6th, put him 7th. I mean, at this point, that's what I would do. What's he going to do? Go and strike? Seriously, what's he going to do? He's getting what? He's got $50 million the next 2 years. Pardon me, and he's got whatever's left from this year. Let's round it off. He's got making $63 million over the next 2 years, $65 million over the next year. It's going to do go and strike.
Yeah, I just think because of the way your day...
He's got the second highest number of at-bats on this team. And he is... Think about that. The second highest number of at-bats on this team, and statistically, he is the worst leadoff hitter in baseball.
Yeah, when you got a bad lineup, momentum matters from one day to the next. You almost want the guys that are getting it done to not have to go to the lineup card and see where they're hitting again. Why's Danny Jansen not playing? Why's Daniel Vogelbach hitting?
That's fair.
I mean, Daniel Vogelbach, right now, is he a big leaguer?
No.
I don't understand. No. I mean, Danny Jansen's got a – what did I write that down at? Danny Jansen, he's slugging .714 in May. Yeah. That's something you want sitting over there on the bench? I mean, they got DHs. If you don't want to catch him every single day, fine. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. But at least have him in the lineup every single day. Sometimes I think organizations and managers just – occasionally just need to take a step back and go, maybe we should just stay out of the way today. Like, yesterday went pretty well. That lineup was constructed. I did a really good job of writing them names in there. That wasn't too bad. And the dude stepped up for me. I mean, they made a comeback. They had some quality at bats. They were tough outs.
It was their
our three-hole hitter playing first finally is a tougher out.
And for the first time,
build around him.
For the first time all year, the Rogers Center felt like it felt like there was a home field advantage there. People were energized. People were engaged.
Sometimes,
we saw home runs. We saw home runs.
Sometimes where people were hitting matters, Jeff. Not all the time. So,
okay.
Sometimes if you're the Twins and you're winning and you got multiple ways of competing against a certain pitcher, more power to you. Jays like that? Absolutely not. They need momentum. They need energy. They need life. And occasionally it's just a dude hitting leadoff who was 3 for 4 one day with 7 total bases and helped you make a comeback. I just
see this,
and it just seems like you're forcing the George Springer on the lineup.
Yeah,
it ain't the lineup's fault that George Springer's got an OPS of 563.
Yeah,
it's George Springer's fault. That's the part of it. I really don't. I don't understand that part of it because again, if you look at their schedule, okay, you're looking at this realistically. You basically want to be in the mix here. They're 18-22. They're 8.5 back in the East. They're 6 games back from the 3rd wild card spot.
Yeah.
They face the Orioles for 3.
Too early to look at the standings.
It is absolutely not for you if you're the Jays. Not when you're 8.5 back in last place, and there's 6 teams in front of you for the 3rd wild card spot.
Now you're making me depressed.
And you're one of the worst offenses in baseball. No,
I was in a happy mood
this
today.
This is the point of you trying to gain momentum and gain some energy in the right positive way because of where your schedule's at. If you can go in the next 6 against the Orioles and the Rays, say 4-2.
Not a chance.
Well, okay, optimistic here. Because of who you have coming up. 3 against the White Sox, 4 against the Tigers, and 3 against the White Sox. Say you went 8-2 in those after going 4-2 in the next 6. You could battle and claw to go 4-2. But if you went 8-2, and all of a sudden now you're 30-26. You're 4 games above 500. That's the point. Is sometimes you just can't overthink it and think that I have to get this lefty in the game because he ain't played in 5 days.
Right.
Against a righty who likes the elevated fastball. Sometimes you overthink it when you don't have to overthink it. Who's my better guys? Why is Danny Jansen not playing? I thought the first time must be hurt. And then he comes up in the 7th inning and pinch hits.
Yeah.
That's just a part of it that sometimes just because of the way they're pitching with their starters. Sometimes I think the starters, again, I'm going to say this. You always say the ownership deserves more. I think the rotation deserves more. So sometimes when you got a hot hand and a lineup just looked right that day, write it in there again like that. That's all.
You know, this in some ways reminds me of what we saw in that playoff series against Minnesota, the decision to pull José Berríos out. It's almost as if, and I understand that that move had been talked about before the game. I get you're going to force Rocco Baldelli's hands. I get all that, but it's almost as if there's a tendency to not know how to react when human nature breaks out. What if José Berríos is dealing on that day in a manner that he hasn't dealt for some time?
Yeah. What if he's good against lefties?
What if Davis Schneider really is the answer at the leadoff spot?
What if?
That's the thing that bothered me about the move with George Springer back in the leadoff
urgency. That's all you want to say.
I'm sure there is some reason he was back in the leadoff spot because I don't think John Schneider's an idiot. I don't think the people around him are idiots. There's a reason for it.
Well, it's overthrows elevated fastball because he's 6'9".
Okay.
That's his lane. That's why.
But
that's why.
Fine. There is a reason there for it. But again, maybe the bigger reason, maybe the thing I need to think about more is the fact that I've got a guy in Davis Schneider who, for whatever reason, it's working. For whatever reason, it's working. I've just had the best offensive game I've had. And with all due respect to Bailey Ober, it's not like, it's not like you're meeting a repeat Cy Young winner.
Roger Clemens.
Exactly. So, like I said, I'm sure there's some analytical reason that decision was.
There's no way an analytics person can go up to John Steiner and go that George Springer is doing this.
I hope it's not.
He's hitting like 110 with runners on base. There's no way you can spin that.
I hope it's not.
No way.
I hope it's not that they're scared of ruffling George's feathers.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's that. It is sometimes mind-boggling that it's almost being forced on a lineup when at the time it doesn't need to be that way. I'm not saying that George can't get out of this. I mean, but you can put him down in the order. You can give him some days off when he needs to. Maybe his bat will get a little quicker. He'll get hot for a couple of weeks, and then you can move him back up there. But right now, it's just not getting it done. He looks like me.
Well, the problem with
his OPS, they love OPSs. It's 563. Like, you can't spin that any other way than 563. And right now, Davis Schneider's is not 563. It's in the thousands. Like, that's the point. Like, the last 10 days, a guy's better than the other guy. Yeah. It's like you can book in him and Danny Jansen and sort of put together a 3-hole hitter now who's a tougher out. That's the part of it right now is, sort of Vladdy is taking a little bit of a step forward. Now use that with a couple of other guys who are hot along with Vladdy. And don't give a guy a day off just for what reason to get Daniel Vogelbach in the lineup. That's the part of it that's really frustrating because, again, they had a golden opportunity here to gain some momentum after coming back against a good team, and then the next day offensively they really didn't show up. Now, is it because of the way the lineup was constructed? Who knows? I just know the lineup wasn't the same as it was the day before.
The day before.
That's all I know. Danny Jansen didn't even play.
We're going to be joined by Jim Duquette. It's like a 2-for-1 Duquette special today. We got Jim Duquette joining us at 2:30. We've got Buck Martinez joining us at 3:30, and Dan Duquette joins us at 3:05. We've also got trivia ticket giveaway, your chance to see the Jays and the Rays at the Rogers Center this Friday. So
you ain't buying my 4-2 and 8-2 in the next 16 games? You ain't buying it, are you?
8-2 in 16 games? That's
10. No. I said 4-2 and 8-2 in the next 16. What would that be? That's 6. That's 3. That's 10. That's the next 16 games. Absolutely.
That they have to do it?
No,
or that
I'm saying
they can
to get above 500, be 30 and 26. This is sort of the soft part of the schedule. Other than the Orioles and the Rays, the next 6. You fight and claw to be 4-2, and then the next 10 is the White Sox for 6 and the Tigers for 4.
Yeah, I'm not certain I call the Tigers.
Tigers a 500 team. Like you want to make a playoff spot?
Well,
you beat 500 teams.
Yeah, they weren't able to beat Kansas City.
Well, Kansas City's not a 500 team.
Yeah, anyhow, the Jays are.
So you ain't buying it?
No.
Try to be optimistic.
Jays are 18 and 22. Tampa Bay is 20 and 21. It's way too early to look at the standings.
It is not.
I can't believe you've got me looking at the standings.
It's not too early.
The Oakland Athletics have a better record than the Jays.
They played 2 more games, 1 more game.
They've got a 452 winning percentage. They're just ahead of the Jays. So there you go. The Orioles are awfully good. They're on a 108 win pace, and they do not appear to be afraid of the New York Yankees anymore. They're calling up one of their prospects, Kyle Stowers, I think. I don't even know if he counts as a prospect. If the Blue Jays, he'd probably be their top prospect, but I don't even know if he counts with Baltimore, given the depth of their minor league system. I want to talk about the bullpen because we talked about this on Friday. Now, the lineup yesterday, can we all agree that Eric Swanson's probably not a leverage guy right now?
Absolutely.
Eric Swanson gave up 2 runs yesterday. That killed, 3-1. The Jays most days aren't coming back from a 3-1 deficit. 5-1, you can pretty much head to the parking lot and leave.
Momentum.
But there are a lot of real broad issues with this team right now. They're full value for their 18 and 22 record. But Kevin, I think the 2 most pressing things going into these 2 series are 1, what do you do with George Springer? And 2, and I know you're going to say, Jeff, what do they do to help the bullpen? Who do they trade? Who do they have to trade? You know what? I'm not paid enough to come up with that answer. Ross Atkins and his guys are paid to come up with that answer.
Yeah.
But they have to do something about the bullpen. Kevin, the bullpen is now it's tied with Tampa Bay's and home runs allowed. It's another story entirely. But if you're not going to score a ton of runs, they absolutely have to do something with the bullpen. And I know it's too early to pull off. I think back to the Adam Simber and Trevor Richards deal. I know it was made later in the season, but that's all I'm saying. Something that bring in somebody that can buy John Schneider and Pete Walker and the coaching staff a little bit of time while you figure out what the hell is wrong with Eric Swanson. Maybe this is Eric Swanson. You figure out what's wrong with Eric Swanson. You can take the gloves off of
Ariel Rodriguez,
Jordan Romano, and
Rodriguez would be a nice mix. He comes back. He can be that sort of swing, long relief, high leverage guy with some stuff.
I made this point. This is an organization that spent 8 days with basically letting its best reliever just sit in the bullpen because
they ain't got nobody else. Who else they got?
Go out and do something, man. I
guess.
Well, if you're not gonna, what does that tell you?
I mean, they went and got Aaron Sanchez.
Aaron Sanchez may at some point this year he may give them a start. I mean, they need starters at AAA because they can't keep their pitchers healthy.
Well,
they need starters at AAA.
You guys are the best.
Yeah. Look, Swanson split. He ain't splitting. When it ain't splitting, he's predictable. It's like the hits he's giving up. It's like basically when you throw two pitches, both are fastballs. I'm a hitter. What am I looking for?
What was the difference Saturday?
He's predictable.
What was the difference in him Saturday?
He's throwing hard enough. It's the 3-0 counts. That's predictable. I can look fastball. It's the when you have non-competitive pitches, I've thrown a couple of this pitch in a row because he's a two-pitch guy. I'm not afraid of his slider. I'm going to look split finger, and it ain't splitting. When it ain't splitting, he's good hitting. Oh, look at that. Look what I did there.
That's pretty good.
That's basically what it is. It just comes down to when do you use him or do you use him? I mean, you would like to be able to, other parts of your game, make up for what he's going through because, when he's good and the split is splitting, it's really good. And you can use him whenever you want to use him. Middle of the order, two lefties, doesn't make any difference because that thing's working. And now all of a sudden he's not predictable. I know they said he's tipping pitches and now he's hiding that thing way back there. It looks very uncomfortable trying to do it. That for me is not it. Like if he throws a couple of 1 and it's either 2-0, 1-1, 2-1, it's like he ain't throwing it 3 times in a row. So I can sort of guess along with what he's trying to do, and I can look in certain zones, and, I can look up. Split finger, if it's up, if I'm looking for it, it's not that good of a pitch. So, yeah, I think that's sort of where they're at with that. And, again, they miss Chad Green. Every time I talk about what they're not doing, they always bring the same name up, Chad Green. Now, they must think a lot highlier of Chad Green than I do, but they sure think that that's a big deal. They need to hurry up and get him back. And for their sake and for the bullpen's sake and especially, the rotation's sake, that seems like every single pitch matters. And I'm going to say this right now. The next 16 games is a big deal for this team. I know this might be a little too early to look at standings, but this is a big deal. And then after the White Sox for 6 and the Tigers for 4, you're right back in the meat of it. Like good teams, you'd like to be above 500. So to your point, they got to figure out their highest leverage guys. Hopefully Jimmy Garcia's okay. When he pitches, he's really good, if not great. Jordan Romano's probably going to do his thing, and then it's everybody else.
Speaking of Jordan Romano, our friend Bob Nightingale has a report that we know the Orioles are interested in adding an arm to the back end of the bullpen. It's probably their only need right now, to be honest. And we're led to believe that Jordan Romano is one of the pitchers on their list, along, I think, with Ryan Helsey. And, of course, everybody wants the guy from Oakland, Mason Miller. Man, at this point, we can have a Jordan Romano discussion. I just don't know if I really feel like having it May 11th right now. But it's an indication. It's an indication of what the industry thinks of where this team is right now. Basically, you're starting to see you're starting to see Justin Turner and Vladdy and Bo show up on the might be traded lists. The industry is talking about that. But before we break, I do want to talk about Vladdy because we spent a lot of time talking about Vladdy when he's scuffling.
Yep.
Extra base hits aren't coming yet, but
baby steps. He's a tough out.
I was going to say he looks like a tougher out now.
Yeah, it is amazing what you can do when you move around in the batter's box, isn't it? Yeah, boy, that is amazing. It's almost like it's too easy, right? It's almost like everything else hasn't worked, and I've sort of last resort kind of thing when I probably should have done this right out the gate. right? It's the what did he used to have problems with the fastball end? It was the lean back. It was the not getting to his finish. It was the roll over to the third. It was the roll over to short. Just because timing-wise, all that stuff happening, it's just very hard to repeat that and get athletic and be able to see that out of the hand and do with it what I want to do with it. Now, all of a sudden, because he's a little further away from the plate, right out of the hand, if it's in there, I ain't swinging at it because I can't do damage on it anyway. So why would I even try and swing at it until I actually have to do it? Now he competes easier, and he's a tougher out. Those two things, because he's oozing talent, it's just sort of the way it looks, right, as you're getting all the hits. Now, sort of that driving the baseball after being a line drive hitter is sort of the last thing to come. That's just point of contact. That's sort of hunting certain pitches and certain counts and catching it out front and, having a little loft in the finish of your swing. But, boy, how can you not like that? Now I would think that Vladdy haters can't wait to have him up with those at-bats that matter. I know I do. And it's just because he's freed himself up. Like now he's able to get the arms extended and the barrel can go wherever the barrel wants to go. And I look like I'm athletic. When he's athletic and he's straight up and down and it's free and easy, bats quick, ball flies off his barrel, and it's in the big part of the field. Continue to do that, home runs will come.
We have got a little bit of news about the show. We'll give it to on the other side of the break as well. The Baltimore Orioles have made a roster move, calling up Kyle Stowers and sending Heston Kierstad, one of their top prospects, optioning him back to AAA. So both Kierstad and Jackson Holiday called up an option back to AAA. I mean, this is one of the things with the Orioles. They've got a lot of good young players, and they're getting that situation where you got to figure out how to get them all up at the right time. You don't want to expose them too early. You got to keep an eye on their service. I know it drives people nuts, but when you got all these young players, you got like I look, they've got 58% of their payrolls arbitration eligible. Like you've got to really manage.
I'm sure they're going to use some of these guys to trade them too.
So exactly, we'll talk to Jim Duquette about that. Dan Duquette joins us as well. Don't go anywhere. It's Blair and Barker for Monday on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and Sportsnet. We'll be joined in a few minutes by Jim Duquette. Dan Duquette joins us at 3 o'clock. Buck Martinez at 3:30. As the Jays open a 3-game series against the Baltimore Orioles tonight. José Berríos against Corbin Burns. Tuesday's Chris Bassett against Kyle Bradish. Wednesday, Yusei Kikuchi against Cole Irvin.
That's some good pitching.
There's some nasty-looking weather on Wednesday. It's a 12:35 game. We'll be on following the game with Blue Jays talk, and of course the game is rained out.
The Orioles have 5 guys with 20 or more RBIs, and they have 4 different guys with a save.
Yeah.
That's called a complete team, Jeff.
It's called a team that's on a 108-win pace.
Yeah, I think the Orioles, we start talking about them now, doesn't matter what they do in the regular season.
You're right.
They're getting there.
No, you are right. They've already won a division title.
When you bring Corbin Burns into the mix, it's about the October. Can't believe I'm saying that.
It's true. We've got tickets to see the Jays and Rays at Rogers Center this Friday. We will give those tickets away later. And a little bit of news about the show. A week from tomorrow, we will be moving to 4 to 6 Eastern. So from my mom in Manitoba.
She's mad or happy?
I don't know. It'll be 3 to 5. So probably just before she has dinner. So it'll be 4 to 6 Eastern, 3 to 5 Central. On Sportsnet 590, The Fan and Sportsnet. Same material, same stuff. It'll be posted on the as a podcast ASAP. So there you go. And that is a week from Tuesday.
21st.
And shout out to the Toronto Maple Leafs for allowing us to make the move earlier.
Stay hot. That's rude.
It is.
That is rude.
It is rude.
Boy.
It is rude.
They fired anybody else?
No, not yet.
Is that shocking?
Not really.
No.
Your
fault. It's not my fault.
No, it's just when that they're going to have the general manager and the club president sitting on the platform at the same time as Keith Pelly. It kind of put 2 and 2 together and figure out they're not firing.
All right.
They're not firing.
Players
anybody.
good enough? Maybe you should start there. It's like the Jays, right?
I mean, are the players good enough? they're good enough in the regular season, which doesn't matter. And I've been telling you this for 3 years. And you keep saying, every time you run into people, they say, tell Blair to stop saying the regular season doesn't matter. Well, folks, the regular season doesn't matter for the Maple Leafs. And they set all sorts of records. It just doesn't matter. If they don't win in the playoffs, it's like the regular season didn't happen.
I think people just like yelling at you or yelling at me about you.
I'd tie the can to a couple of guys. I thought the John Tavares contract was silly to begin with.
Don't you sometimes just need to mix it up? It's like the Jays in the offseason. Had a golden opportunity there to mix it up a little, right? Bring in a new third baseman. Do something at second base.
Pat Gillick.
Get you a thumper that can DH every day. Something like that.
Pat Gillick, Alex Anthopoulos, Brian Cashman, Joe Torre, Ned Colletti, Dave Roberts, Theo Epstein, Terry Francona all have said the same thing. You know what? It doesn't hurt to have some new voices, some new energy,
some guys that are
on
hungry.
A real good team. Some guys that are hungry.
It's just a different look. It's like the bullpen, right? You bring in the same bullpen, expecting the same thing you got the year before. It's not the easiest thing to get.
Jim Duquette is MLB Network radio analyst. He's a former MLB GM. He joins us on Blair and Barker. Jim, thanks so much for joining us today. We trust that you're doing well. The timing is great. Well, it's great to have you on anytime.
Absolutely.
But the Orioles,
the
Orioles just announced that they are optioning Heston Kierstad back down to the minors, bringing up Kyle Stowers. Of course, earlier this year they brought Jackson Holliday up, sent him down, and I know that you and Jim Bowden had Mike Elias, the Orioles GM, along a few weeks ago on your show on MLB Network Radio, and I'm just wondering, when I look at this organization, the Orioles, I look at all those young players. Are there any lessons here, do you think, in terms of bringing guys up before they're not ready?
Oh man, that is I think an answer that Major League Baseball, every team is trying to figure out, because even the most let's say highly touted prospects, they're going to have kind of a rocky. Some of them will have a rocky start to their major league career, right? And I mean, we could go back in time too, but I mean, Judge, if you look at his first 80 at bats. 85 at bats. I think he struck out half of them. Trout struggled. You're talking about superstar players in the sport now that their early 100 at bats or so were not great. And I think the thing I hear with a lot of teams now is, because the talent in AAA is not. It's the furthest away from the talent at the major league level. The separation is so great that even if you're swinging the bat well in AAA, it's not a real test until you get to the major leagues and handling that type of high-end velocity, nasty breaking stuff that you see on a nightly basis. You can't really get tested like that in the minor leagues. And so it's a real problem league-wide right now. Everybody kind of talks about it. Any pitcher that's any good, that has good command of their stuff, is in the big leagues right now. So how is your AAA hitter, specifically those are hitters that you were mentioning, they're having a hard time with the adjustment at the major league level.
How are the Orioles going to play this, do you think? I mean, they've got Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman are established. Colton Cowser is established. I think we can say Jordan Westberg is established. I mean, at some point they're going to have to. Right, they've got almost 60% of their payroll right now are arbitration guys. I think if you include pre-arb guys, it goes up to 70%. And I mean, at some point, it's great right now, but at some point, I think you have to sign. I mean, I think you have to sign Rutschman and Henderson to long-term contracts. Maybe one of them gets a Bobby Witt deal. I don't know if you could give two of them that, Jim. But then you got to manage the other guys. And as you well know, when you have a lot of young guys coming up, there's an art to making sure that the right guy gets paid at the right time, and maybe just as important that the wrong guy doesn't get paid at the wrong time. How do you think Mike Elias manages this?
Yeah. Those are all great questions. I say it's really one of the difficulties, and it's a good problem to have, but it's a difficult problem too, because of the sense that, Okay, you got Cedric Mullins, who's an established player, been an all-star. Anthony Santander, outfielder, switch hitter, all-star occasionally. May end up being an all-star this year. We'll see. And you've got 2-3 good young outfielders that are ready to take their place, but you don't know if they're completely ready yet. So you're giving them kind of on-the-job training. You're introducing them one at a time, seeing how it looks. Kauser got started last year, struggled. This year, he's hit the ground running. Kerstead is a different story. He's off to a bit of a struggle, so they're going to try Stowers. But one or two of those guys are going to take the place of Mullins and Santander. They're going to end up being free agents, or Elias is going to trade them to get back younger talent in return. I think that's how he plays it. Now, to your point on the young talent, like everybody in Baltimore, they're thankful they've got a change in ownership. Mm-hmm. But now they're waiting for this David Rubenstein to do something. And the first order is for them to try to sign one of these young or two of these young players to long-term contracts. Gunnar Henderson's represented by Scott Boras, so unless it's a record breaker, he's not going to sign it. So you focus on Adley Rutschman, who's not represented by Boras, but still going to be expensive, and you hope that you sign one of them.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the Orioles, you're looking at a shutdown closer. I don't know if realistically they're thinking they can win a World Series with Kimbrel in the ninth inning. Right. With that being said, with the thing you just mentioned about the competition at the minor league level, maybe this is sort of like a showcase. You call a guy up, you let other teams that maybe would like to, be in trade talks for a closer, an elite closer, a shutdown, no-brainer closer. Have you ever done that? Have you ever heard of an organization that's sort of on that cusp of its World Series or bust? And I think maybe we're not so much there with the Orioles, but we're really, really close. You think that's a possibility?
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, I think there's a good chance. Let's say this past year they traded for Corbin Burns, right? One of the best starters. And one of the guys they included in that deal was the left-hander named D.L. Hall, who was a minor leaguer. And as a minor leaguer, he was a starter. He came up in the bullpen, but they were showing that they were going to stretch him out to be a starter. So everybody kind of looked at that as in the industry. Wow, okay, I think he can start. His stuff is really electric. So the Brewers, doubled down and said, we think he can be a starter, so we'll take him in this deal. And so in this essence, they were showcasing him as a starter. Orioles may or may not have made him a starter. So that happens a fair amount, on that particular area. And I think that's, likely the same thing here. Now, I would have thought last year they were showcasing Jordan Westburg. Now, Westburg, the tricky part on this is Westburg's turned himself into a quality everyday player who can really swing it, and he can play good defense, right? So it can go in reverse on you. You can showcase a guy, he gets off to a struggle, you think you know him, and then you end up giving up a really quality piece in return. So it's inexact. Is the any front office that says they've got it figured out, they're not telling you the truth.
Jim, Jays are 18-22. They're 8.5 games back in the East. They're 6 games back of the third wild card spot. When do you think a organization starts talking about punting on their team?
So I would say the one thing with, obviously not the way you want to start, right? And they're last place in the division, and, trying to catch those two at the top going to be hard. But the wild card, the target's a little lower, obviously, because of the wild card, and you can make a run, if you can get into the postseason. They got a couple of issues that you guys were outlining a little bit, right? They came back with the same starters, came back with most of the same relievers. I was skeptical from the very beginning because hardly year after year do you see the same guys doing the same, pitching at the same level. You got to change it up just a little bit, just in case you see the struggles. So that's one area. But I think you get to this benchmark, and it's right about now, maybe give it another 10 days, and you have to do this internal assessment of where your weaknesses are, and how can you improve? You're initially saying, I'm not giving up on the season. We still need internal improvement, and then let's go out and try to make a deal. But if you're in a similar spot, let's say you're double digits behind the wild card area, they need to sell. Be a 1-year sell, trade a couple guys that are going to be going into free agency, or maybe guys, free agent in 2 years from now, and try to regroup. But you do that carefully because, you got to know you have some leeway up there. There might be some jobs in jeopardy. And so it might be one of those where they're like, well, we're gonna continue to go for it here, even though, the right thing would be to go ahead and be a temporary seller in that scenario.
Who do you think would get them the bigger haul, Bo or Vladdy?
Boy, that's a tough one. I think Bo would because of the position, even though, some teams would say, well, we got a good shortstop. Well, he could move. I wouldn't want to do it in season, move to third base. But if I'm a team that needs a middle of the infield, let's say a shortstop, like I would have interest in give more for Bo. That's if Vladdy continues to, not hit for the type of power that we've seen, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that I would go that route. I know Vladdy's better at first, but it's still not great over there at first. So, and it's easier to find first basemen that aren't going to cost you as much when it comes to, prospect capital. So, again, if I need a shortstop, I'm going that route. If I'm Toronto, I got to consider that, especially if you can't sign them up long term.
Yeah.
Jim, are you or the industry in general surprised that at least one of those guys hasn't, been signed to a contract that buys out a couple of years of free agency? I've been asking this question for years, and, the answer I get from everybody around the organization is, well, there has to be some shared risk. I don't know what that means, but we've never had the sense that they've been close on a multi-year deal with either of these guys. Now, Bo signed the multi-year deal to take him through arbitration. But Are you surprised that we're sitting here? They're running a $235 million payroll. That's the 7th highest in baseball. And they don't have either of these guys locked up beyond their free agent years?
I am surprised. I thought that last year was the time that they should have gotten one or both of them done. And any of these contracts, when you look at them, you have to go to that uncomfortable number. Usually the longer you wait, the more expensive it is. Now, for the Cubs, a couple years ago, they had Bryant, they had Baez, they had Wilson Contreras, they had Rizzo. They went down this route. They waited. They had made them pretty fair offers. The players rejected it. They became free agents, and they didn't get great deals going out there. So there are instances where, the club was probably smarter not to do it. But for the most part, it's better when you have a young talent like those two have, and they're going to be free agents at 27 years old, I think. Mm-hmm. Those are the guys that you generally are seeing signed up around the major leagues, and for me, they got to sign one of them. I think it's apparent, or it certainly seems like they can't at the moment because they're not willing to go the extra length to get them signed, but. You have to, I think, be a little uncomfortable with one of these guys and bank on the talent, And if it was one, I probably would do Bo over Vladdy.
Jim, I talked to the Yankees when they were in town. I was asking about Juan Soto, and I said, do you think the Yankees will sign Juan Soto either really soon or in the offseason? Mm-hmm. And somebody brought up the point, would you give him more than you gave Cole or Judge? And I went, I don't even think that – would that even matter? Is that a big deal? What do you think about that?
So Soto, because, Boris represents he's going to wait till the free agency period because he's going to have two teams bidding against the minimum, Yankees and Mets. All right, the Mets are going to go hard after him. They need that offensive player too. And so, you can't – if you're him, you're like, I got to wait and see this thing out. Now, the interesting thing is, you just take a look at Soto and Judge. I think it's a great comparison. Judge signed a deal for $360 million, and he signed it going into his age 31 season. You know how old Juan Soto is going to be at the end of this year? I think he's going to turn 27.
Yeah,
he's four years younger than Judge. And so if you just look and say, well, all right, I'll give him the same amount of money per year that Judge got. He gets at least, in my opinion, 3 more years than Judge. That number adds up to over $440 million.
Yeah,
That's where the number is going to be. If I'm Scott Boras and he's like an MVP candidate, like Judge was, like all those things, like I don't see how it would be less than 450 for either of those two teams to sign up. The Yankees could probably do it now if they wanted, but I'm not even sure at this point it would get it done because Scott Boras wants to wait.
Jim, really good of you to join us today. Terrific insight as always, my friend. Be well.
Thanks, buddy.
Anytime.
See ya.
Talk to you.
Jim Duquette is an analyst with MLB Network Radio, former MLB GM. You can follow him on Twitter at Jim_Duquette. That show, he and Jim Bowden. Bowden or Bowden? Why do I have a Bowden Francis thing? Anyhow,
Jim
Bowden. It is a great it's a great show on MLB Network Radio.
Can't teach experience, buddy.
It is a must listen. Guys who've
done it all.
Guys who've made tough calls.
Screwed up. You got to go through it.
And we're going to be joined by another GM, Dan Duquette, Dan Duquette was GM of the Montreal Expos when they were trying to figure out how they were going to get some of their young guys up in the majors. So he's now founder of Duquette Consulting. He'll join us after 3 o'clock. Buck Martinez at 3:30. Wanted to mention this before we left. Don't know if you had a chance, but Friday after we did the Blue Jays talk, going home in the train, I watched the Padres-Dodgers game. Michael King and Tyler Glasnow. It may be one of the best regular season baseball games I've seen in 20 years.
Why?
Ton of strikeouts, fast-paced. The energy at that ballpark when the Padres. I keep telling people, man, people talk about Yankees and Red Sox. The rivalry in baseball right now is Dodgers San Fran, Dodgers San Diego. I mean, they do not like each other. And, of course, the Padres won it with Luis Arias, who I do believe has the slowest bat speed of anybody in baseball, I think, in the new. Or one of the slowest bat speeds in anybody in baseball. Was just slow enough to deliver a game-winning. Game-winning hit.
Throw it out there.
It was, man, I'll tell you what, it was like a freaking playoff game.
Yeah.
It was so enjoyable. Tyler Glasnow was just filthy.
I mean, if he can stay healthy, he's a really good pitcher. It's just the health part of it. That's it. There's a lot of parts.
And I'll tell you what,
to keep healthy.
Michael King, Juan Soto's a great player, but Michael King is getting it done for San Diego. We talked about this. I think both of us were on the same page when we made our preseason picks. We thought a lot of people were sleeping on the Padres. I think the Padres.
You didn't pick them.
I picked them to go to the playoffs, not to win the division, but I picked them to go to the playoffs.
I don't believe you. I didn't hear you say that.
Yeah.
I think that was me.
We both said the Padres.
I have to go back
I
and
think
check.
a lot of people were sleeping on them, but man, and I was just saying it was just terrific baseball.
Yeah,
it was so good and just. It was like September. It just felt like September. But
a lot of money running around on that field. Some guys need to, start getting it going and earning their money, and I think that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
The best competition sort of brings that out in you. Yeah.
And it was there was no pissing around out there. There was guys looking at each other, and it was fun. It was a fun game.
It's about time.
It was a fun game. Yeah, I think the Padres are I think that race is going. Look, the Dodgers are so good.
It's not really a race.
It's not really.
The Dodgers
a race.
are going to run away with the West. It's just the Padres get in.
If you could somehow get the Padres Dodgers matched up in the postseason, I'll tell you what. If that happens,
cooking with gravy.
If that happens, I might pick the Padres against the Dodgers.
Don't get crazy.
I might. When the Padres Express. Plus, those uniforms are spectacular.
They are one.
Dan Duquette is the founder and president of Duquette Consulting. He's a former general manager of the Orioles from 2011-2018, the Red Sox, and also, of course, the Montreal Expos. We'll talk to him about the Orioles' trajectory as an organization, and we'll talk to him as well about how he would handle the situation with Bo and Vlad and maybe even George Springer. Buck Martinez joins us as well. I know he's got some thoughts on that. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and Sportsnet. All right, welcome back to Blair and Barker for Monday, the first day of the week. 6:35 is the first pitch tonight. Jays and the Baltimore Orioles. José Berríos against Corbin Burns. Blair and Barker will be along following the game with Blue Jays talk. Right
Winning
across
edition?
the Sportsnet radio network. Yes,
Ooh.
winning edition.
Wow, even with Burns throwing.
Yeah.
Whoa, you got Cutter.
Yeah, he
Decent
does,
slider. Good
Okay,
curveball.
anyhow, we'll be along following the game with Blue Jays
Change
talk.
up the lefties.
We're going to be joined in a few minutes by Dan Duquette. I got tickets to give away here.
To where?
To Tahiti. It's an all-expense pay. Oh, no,
We can't
sorry.
win this?
No. We're giving you the chance to win Blue Jays tickets all season long here in Blair and Barker. Actually, the winner of this draw gets to hit leadoff when the Jays return home. We're giving you the chance to win Blue Jays tickets all season long here in Blair and Barker.
Nobody's going to put in for
All you have to, I know one guy who will. All you have to do is text the correct answer
He's
to
a
our daily
shoo-in.
baseball trivia
Every
question
day.
to 590-590.
No matter what.
Stop it. Our last trivia question and answer was, which former Toronto Blue Jays pitcher once threw a no-hitter for the Minnesota Twins? Francisco Liriano.
Yeah, I played
2011.
winter ball with him.
Of course you played winter ball with him.
What's this? Lou used to always tell me, man, good thing I didn't have to face that guy. He was filthy. Man. And then he fell off a cliff, but he was filthy when I played with him.
Today's question is to win tickets to see the Jays and Rays at the Rogers Center on Friday, May 17th. This slugger, who played for both Tampa Bay and Toronto during his career, was known for hitting towering home runs into the 500 level at Rogers Center. Name him. This slugger, who played for both Tampa Bay and Toronto during his career, was known for hitting towering home runs into the 500 level at Rogers Center. Name him. That was back when the Blue Jays.
What's it for? Is it for tickets. Or the leadoff hitter?
Tickets.
Good.
That was back when the Blue Jays used to hit home runs. Text the answer to 590 for your shot to win. See rules at sportsnet.ca/590.
Yeah, run prevention team.
Buck Martinez is going to join us at 3:30. He's going to join us from Baltimore.
You guys try to get along, won't you?
He and Danny have the call of the game.
Can't promise.
By the way, shout out to Dan Schulman on Friday. I was listening to their telecast, and he made a comment about, as the conversation got around to exit velocity, he made a comment about, I understand there's some fatigue out there with exit velocity. And I laughed, and I laughed, and
Blair
I
and
laughed,
Barker.
and I laughed.
Tell Barker I love him.
I appreciate
laughed,
it. That means a lot.
Anyhow.
Yeah, it's results. Yeah, I mean, sooner than later. Isn't it about how many hits you get? And
It's always
sometimes
about-
where they go.
It's all about somebody. Look, I hope you people realize by now that a large part of what we do when it comes to talking analytics is just good, clean fun.
Not true.
That
Not true. No, maybe you. Not. Yeah, I mean, sometimes.
it is.
It's occasionally.
It's good,
Like
clean
a third
fun.
of it.
It's good, clean fun.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
I guess.
we're not really.
Yeah, I was 0 for 4, but at least I hit that ball hard. Boy, now I can sleep better at night.
We're not. We're only. We have a certain amount of fun with it, just because we know it drives people nuts.
Who's the people?
Some of the people.
Oh,
They take this game way too seriously, man.
it is a game.
We try to have fun in the show.
It is a game
We
until
try
you,
to have fun in the
until you
show.
stink at it.
That's
it
true.
ain't a game anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Trust me, I stunk a long time. It ain't no game. It's a job then. And when it becomes a job, and you can see it in their faces, like Bo's there, George is there, like
Well,
you
got a
could go
home
down
run
the list.
Saturday.
I know, but it's the consistency of how the at bats look and the timing and all that stuff. And
I had a question to ask you, and I forgot.
yeah,
Oh, very quickly before Dan Duquette joins us. So Kevin Gossman, again, has trouble with that. At this point, should they just not pitch Kevin Gossman against the Twins?
no,
Oh, okay.
let's make better pitches, set it up better.
You don't think that there's a tell on him, or that
Absolutely not. He's got 2 pitches.
You've
the
always said,
location of
what
the-
tell is there when you
I
got
mean,
two pitches?
he would get to 2 strikes, and it's just the quality of the 2 strikes. And, why would I look down? Why wouldn't I look up and sell out? 2 strikes, nobody else can hit with 2 strikes. It's like you got to simplify it. If it's up, I got a chance. If it's down, I got no chance.
That's fair.
It's
That's
real
fair.
simple. He makes a good pitch, I'm normally out. If he doesn't, at least I got a chance. he left some balls up ahead in the count. When you do that against a good lineup, and he got to pitch in a little bit better against his lefties. Like, that's the one thing with Berríos tonight. You got to be good in there. Like, you got to be very simplified and methodical of when you go in to set up the stuff away, like the back door and the front hip. And, like, there's a reason why you throw it in to set up and just be able to get away with some bad ones away. So, you got to – one's sort of feeding off the other. And with Kevin with the Twins, it's probably in his head a little bit. But the quality of his stuff was just not always there in this last outing, and I'm sure he'll tell you the same thing.
José Berríos is coming off a game against the Phillies where he wasn't very good. The Phillies, 6 left-handed hitters, were 5 for 11, 2 walks, 2 hit by pitches, 2 home runs. He gave up 8 earned runs, which is more than he gave up in the first 7 games.
Yeah, it was out in front with the Harper homer. That's the one that sort of made. That's the one the stats don't look real good. I mean, that was a decent pitch. I mean, it was down. It was out of the strike zone. It's just a really good hitter who is, Buck Martinez says this all the time. Them run producers sit spin, and if you throw it somewhere where they can create some backspin, because that's how they make their living is driving in runs. And you got to sell out against an approach. That's why we talk about this with the Blue Jays all the time. Either the Blue Jays can't, which I think some guys can, or they just sort of have the sporadic – I got this plan while walking to the plate. After the first pitch, I got this plan. It's just like, I ain't really got one. Like, it's all over the place now, and I'm looking at this. It's just like, and at the big league level, because of how good the khakis are, how good the pitching coaches are relaying the plan to the pitcher, and how hard they throw and how many breaking balls they throw. It's just, you got to sell out to a plan. And if you do that, because a lot of these dudes have enough talent, you're going to have success. If you don't, you're going to look like George Springer. I mean, that's I can't say it either way. That's sort of what George is doing right now. George swings too much. You go and look at his swing stat, and I hate to, don't laugh at me. He swings at everything.
His bat speed.
He swings at about 50% of the pitches he sees. That's way too many. I mean, he's almost 35. Sorry. You can't do that. You can't cover enough windows in the strike zone to think you're going to have success doing that. He needs to be like a high 30% swing guy, which will tell you that he's hunting something, and if I don't get it, I'm going to take it. Because really right now I can't hit it anyway. No. So it's that kind of thing, right? And until you start getting frisky, getting more confidence, and the more confidence you get, then you can open up the windows and start swinging a little bit more. But, man, this is what I said. It's a momentum thing. You got a lineup who's struggling. When you get a game there where everybody's not struggling, you got to ride that out a little. And that's sort of what the manager's job is, right? There you go.
I mean, I used to think that.
Bing, bang, boom. I've been told that that's the way it is. The information is being given, and the lineup that you see is from John. So I will continue to say it that way, and I'll give John credit for one thing. He is, going to die on that hill with George Springer leading off. Like, George can never say that he gave up on me.
Oh, I was going to say
he can never say that, boy.
No,
because he
can never say the manager wasn't in my corner.
There you go. Okay. He can never say I didn't get my opportunities because you're getting them.
Is this an issue? Like,
absolutely, it's an issue.
No, it's an issue.
Absolutely.
Is it the type of issue?
560 OPS.
Is it the type of issue, though, that could really have an impact on the team in the clubhouse?
Let me ask you a question. If we're talking about it this much, you don't think a smart dude that plays every day is talking about this? You don't think Bo Bichette's going, man, I got moved down and I stunk for a while. Why isn't this dude getting moved down? You don't think he says that? He's a human being. I would say that. I would say that to John. Hey, he's a human being. You wouldn't say that? Absolutely, it's a thing. Like, that's the point here is whenever, again, you're just trying to gain some momentum because of what you don't do well consistently. If you have a good game where everything worked out right, why would you try and ride that? Now you went 0 for 4. Actually, you went 0 for 6 because you put Vogelbach in a game who looks like yours truly. And it's like, that was 0 for 6 with what? 2 punchies. It's just okay. It's like, That's what I thought. Is Danny hurt? That's the first thing I thought of. Is Danny hurt? And then I saw John walk over and say, "Danny, you're hitting against the lefty." And there went that out the window.
I just assumed it was because with the games coming up, they wanted Jano available.
Can't DH?
2 night games and a day.
Can't DH?
And an off
I mean,
day.
Danny said he's averaged about 60 games a year for the last couple of years.
That is true.
They've had how many days off the last 2 weeks? Like, it's go time. It's like you write your best lineup down right now. I said this, next 16 games, Jeff, if they can go 12-4, they're 30-26. We are talking about this team different. We just are 30-26. No matter what place they're in, we can't take them serious until they're 500. So that's all. It's just like every once in a while, not all the time, because sometimes you got to use everything and you know your room better than everybody else does. But boy, 2 days off because he's sick and he's got an OPS over 500. Ain't 600. It's over 500. So I got a guy on Davis Schneider who went 3 for 4 the night before and helped me make a comeback. That's all.
We're going to be joined in a few minutes, hopefully by Dan Duquette, former MLB general manager. Buck Martinez, Blue Jays analyst on Sportsnet, will join us as well from Baltimore.
Yeah,
God, I hope he's
Buffalo.
not in Buffalo. 6:35.
It's getting warmer in Buffalo, though. Ball starts to fly there.
Elvis Martinez.
He's making a lot of errors. Where would he play? A lot of errors.
Bat.
He ain't DHing.
Well,
He's 22. He ain't DHing.
No, listen, I said I do not. God love him, but I'm not ready for the summer of irrelevance.
They're run preventing, Jeff.
Yeah, I know.
Them 11 errors ain't going to work.
If he's up here, that means they've punted. That means they've traded. I think one of the two.
Clement made them 2 errors yesterday, and you thought the world had ended.
Yeah,
you know. Again, when guys don't play every single day, you get straight-legged. Like I've been straight-legged a bunch of times where when you make your little move and you walk up to the ball and your legs get straight instead of bend, glove tends to go straight down instead of under that baseball. He did it twice yesterday. That's the point, right? It's the flow of the season. When you don't play every day, every little part of your game has to be almost perfect. Because it's that rhythm, it's that timing, it's just that monotony of doing the same thing over and over and over, no matter which balls hit to you,
and the ball
lefty or righty.
The ball does find you at third
absolutely
base.
It does. Absolutely it does. So,
Finds
yeah,
you
you
at
got
third
to
base.
that's why everybody says Fanny's got to be down. If it's up, glove gets stiff, it's down towards the ball instead of under the ball. There you go. Baseball 101. Bing, bang, boom.
As we mentioned, the Blue Jays.
I'm in a good mood today for some reason.
Well, you weren't at the start of the show.
I know, because you started the show in a terrible way.
I wanted to be optimistic.
Well, yeah, we know better. Like fans of yours know better, and of this show.
They can see through my optimism.
I think it's, yeah.
The Jays are in Baltimore for the next 3 days to take
Stop reminding us.
to take on the Baltimore Orioles, who are on pace for 108 wins, and
105 after this series.
105 after this series, right? The Orioles obviously are awfully good. They're
really
awfully
good.
young. And today, as we mentioned, they've made a move sending down one of their top prospects, Heston Kierstad, and bringing up Kyle Stowers. Dan Duquette is former general manager of the Orioles and the Boston Red Sox and the Montreal Expos. He's founder of Duquette Consulting. Dan, thanks so much for joining us on Blair and Barker. Look, you've, I know from covering you when you were with the Expos and the other teams, you have had to balance all the factors that come into bringing up young players into the major leagues, trying to make sure you do it at the right time, trying to make sure you make the right call on the right players, all of that stuff. I wanted to ask you, with the Orioles right now, we've already seen them call up Holiday, send him down, call up Kierstad, send him down. Is it a little more difficult to manage all these good young prospects coming up at the same time than we might let on?
Well, how are you guys? And thanks for having me on. I don't know, Jeff. I don't know it's a problem if you have a lot of good young prospects.
Yeah.
Okay? At any point in the supply chain when you're developing all these players to play in the big leagues, the more depth you have and the more talent you have, usually, the better options you have and the better your process is. So the Orioles have a good pipeline. They've done a good job. We left them a foundation, but they've done a very good job drafting position players particularly.
Dan,
and developing them to get to the big leagues to have an impact on the team.
Yeah, Dan, is there ever a worry about the player, right? I know they're trying to win and they're in win mode now, but I was a young player, right? It's sort of the writing on the wall when you are getting called up and it sort of feels like that revolving door. Ever a worry from an organization about that part of it, the human part of it?
Well, the human part is part of it all the time, right? But if you have a good system and you have a good player development operation, and you bring those players up to the big leagues, you should have good instructors that should help them continue to improve. I mean, in the big leagues, look, that's where the best facilities are. That's where the best talent is. That's where your best people are. And frankly, you have to develop those players in the big leagues, continue to develop them in the big leagues, to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. I see a lot of clubs and their player development in the big leagues falls short, right? They're not doing what they need to do to help the players get better, to help the players stay healthy, to get the players thinking along the lines of the way winning players think. And that's an issue for some of these teams that I see from time to time. But having good players, it's incumbent on the organization to have good people to help them develop their talent and skill.
Dan, how does an organization decide when to offer – I'm going to use Bobby Witt as an example – when to offer that type of a contract to a good young player? And how do they go about deciding, especially when they've got multiple young players? Like we saw this, the Jays never got a deal with Bo and Vlad done that bought out any of their free agent years. It probably won't. It doesn't look like it at this point. But how do you go about deciding who you go all in on? Because I don't think you can have 4 Bobby Witt Jr. type deals if you're the Orioles, as much as you want to. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe David Rubenstein's got all the money in the world. But how do you go about picking that guy?
Well, I don't know that you focus on one player for your team. You got to take a look at your team, and you have to plan not just for this season, but you got to plan for future seasons. And take a look at, when the players will be emerging and when you think they're going to be available to help you, accomplish your goals, right? I mean, these things are hard because you got so many moving parts, right? The players have to be the right age. They have to be healthy. They have to be motivated. You have to have a bunch of them together at the same time. You got to keep your pitchers healthy. So, it's hard, but I like to identify 1 or 2 core players to build a team around. And in Boston, the players that I picked were Nomar Garciaparra. He was the number 1 pick for us. He was a very talented hitter. He won the batting title a couple of times. And I chose him as the position player, and the pitcher that I chose was Pedro Martinez, who I knew. He was a highly talented guy, elite player, had everything you wanted in a pitcher. And I put my stake in the ground and said, these are the guys that I'd like to lead our team long term. They were the right age. They had the right skills. They had the charisma, talent, desire. And those are the guys that I thought my fans would really like. And that's how I picked it. When I got to Baltimore, the player that I looked at and saw that was on the roster that I wanted to work with very closely and carefully was Adam Jones. Mm-hmm. And I chose him. He was a center fielder. He was the right age. He could play defense. He could hit for power, and he had charisma too. The fans in Baltimore loved him. So I said, I'd like to try to build a team around Adam Jones. So I don't know, your most talented players that could have the biggest impact and the ones that your fans are going to like, I think, are kind of some of the criteria you have to look at when you're looking to build a team long term.
That's really interesting because I think sometimes people lose sight of the fact that you want charisma. You do want somebody who can be the face of the face of your franchise. Yeah, you want a good dude. You want a guy who really does help establish the clubhouse culture. And one of the things I often think people don't give Pedro enough credit for. Now, I know they do in Boston. And Dan, you know this as well as anybody. I mean, Boston had the reputation as not necessarily being the friendliest place for a Latino player or an African-American player. But when you brought Pedro in, and I remember actually Theo Epstein saying this one time, crediting you, and said, Pedro was like a one-man cultural change vehicle. He just was.
He was dynamite. Pedro's dynamite. I looked all around the world for players, and I never found anybody that had all the gifts that Pedro had. I mean, the guy had everything, right? Mm-hmm. And Boston was late to the party on diversifying their team. They were the last ones to integrate, but I was basically looking for the best players. I knew from my time in Montreal, it didn't matter where the players came from,
right?
As long as you had good players, as long as you had talented players. And we had a number of Latins in Montreal, and the fans embraced them, right? Because they could see that those players had this great exuberance, and they took great joy in playing their sport and playing baseball, and that really resonated with Expo fans, right? Mm-hmm. And I knew from my experience in recruiting in the Dominican that the passion that the fans had in the Dominican was very similar to the passion that the fans had around the Red Sox, right? I mean, these are people that love the game, that love to be at the park, that like to rub shoulders with the players on the team, that it's important for them in the culture that baseball was important to them. Mm-hmm. And how your team does was important to them. And I said, shoot, this is a perfect place for Dominican players because, in the Dominican, they love baseball just like the fans of New England love the Red Sox. And Pedro was a revolutionary because he was so talented. But we were just looking for the best players we could find to transform the organization into a winning team every year.
Dan, I was wondering, George Springer here is struggling. He's getting up there in age. I think he's 34. He'll be 35 in September. He's gotten off to a really, really, really slow start. And I just wonder, as an organization, when you've given a guy a big deal, he's got 2 years plus this half a year left on his deal. That's somewhere, I think, close to $70 million, which is a ton of money. I wonder, as an organization, how they have conversations about when it gets sort of like that, what you do with a player. Do you continue just to run him out there, or do you have to have tough conversations with either his agent or the manager, or, trying to figure out what you're going to have to do with him?
Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't followed the Jays that closely, but I see several players that have gotten off to a slow start up there, right? Yeah. Bichette, Guerrero, George Springer, Gosman's not doing so much this year. I see Manoah performed a lot better in his past. So I see quite a few players up there that have gotten off to a slow start. So I'm not exactly sure what the issues are, but we've all had signed players who when we signed them, we hoped they were going to play real good till the end of the contract, and sometimes it doesn't go the way that you want, and you have to make some adjustments. But certainly George Springer at his age should have some good baseball left in him.
Dan, at what point as an organization do you decide to punt on a season? And I know it's not one size fits all. Understanding there's a division, and
Yankees are good, Orioles are good, Red Sox are getting better.
Well, the American League East, that's a tough neighborhood, right? The most competitive division in all of pro sports. Theo and Andrew, they were smart. They got out of it and went to the National League. But I saw something this year that I'd never seen before, and that was at the start of the season, and you look at the odds for teams to make the playoffs, and I looked up and I saw that the Colorado Rockies were given 0 chance to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is disconcerting, right? Because you want to be able to provide your fans hope that you're going to have a good team, right? That they're going to be able to come out and see meaningful games and connect with the team. To me, you're either trying to win now or you're trying to win later. And if you're trying to win later, I've found that it's better to announce, hey, look, we're going to rebuild and we're going to try to do what we have to do to structure our team so that we can win later. And we appreciate you staying with us. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we think we got the right people to do it. And that's different for each organization. It depends on how much depth you have on the team, what the status of your ownership is, what the current contract situation is, what players you have that are coming up. But the thing is, like, when do you punt in the American League East? To me, it's like never. It's like, if you're going to punt in the American League East, it's going to be a rough time for you, and you got to try to work very, very diligently to have a good farm system and also have a good team at all times. I'm not big on rebuilds, but if you have to rebuild, I think it's better when you tell the fans, "Hey, look, we're changing course for the time being."
Dan, did you talk more or less when your team was struggling?
Well, everybody wants you to talk more because then, you don't have the narrative of the pennant race, right? Mm. You don't have the narrative of the pennant chase. But, there's only so much you can say, right? You have educated fans there that follow the Blue Jays. They know it's a tough division. They know that, their team has to be well-staffed to compete in the American League East day in and day out. And they follow the game. So I give a lot of credit to the fans. I'm not trying to snow everybody and tell them we got something that we don't have. I think you just got to be honest with everybody and tell them where you're at in the competitive cycle. These things can change quickly.
Yep.
Dan, really good of you to join us today, my friend. Thanks so much. Great to chat with you again.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. Thanks a lot. Talk to you guys later.
Take care. It's Dan Duquette, former MLB general manager of the Orioles, Red Sox, and Expos. That's interesting. Yeah, interesting. I mean, he was, you look at some of the contracts the Orioles had when he was there. Chris Davis. I think Chris Davis is one of his signings. But it is Orioles. True. You've got to. I mean, you have to be brave to offer a contract like that. There's a certain amount of bravery required to do that. And
what if they're both playing really well? Who do you give the most money to?
Well,
who do you give the most years to?
David Sampson talked about like 4 years ago when he said at that point you've got to, you look at the player and you say, okay, who's going to stay healthier? That's a big thing. But I'm thinking back now. I mean, we always thought, again with Vladdy, when he first came up, what were we saying? Man, hopefully he can find a position for him, and hopefully that body doesn't break down. And they have.
Yep.
And it hasn't.
Nope.
And I've often kind of wondered if you could really, I would love to sit down and find out why there was never any traction on a long-term contract for Vladdy. Because Dan made this point, and I'm glad he did this. It is an entertainment product.
Absolutely.
You do want your fans to like your players.
Sure.
From what I can tell, Vladdy's pretty well. People will boo every now and every now and then.
For the water throwing it,
and you get the old grump calling up, and he doesn't take the game seriously enough, and he shouldn't be talking to everybody, and yada yada, et cetera, et cetera. But fans seem to really like him, and sometimes I think you overlook the fact that it is an entertainment product. But I also like what Dan said. If you decide to punt in the AL East, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
because it's not going to be a quick rebuild.
It's not
in that division.
No.
And especially now, like the Orioles aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Boston's probably going to be better. Boston very quietly has some of the best pitching in the American League. And at some point, they're going to be able to add pitchers.
Yep.
The Yankees are the Yankees. If they do sign Juan Soto, and of course the Tampa Bay Rays, we all know about them. It really doesn't matter where the Rays are in the standings in any particular date. There's always a chance that at the end of the year they'll be second. So it is a tough division to punt in. And, if you don't believe me, ask Baltimore Orioles. How long did they have to walk through the wilderness to get
Too
where
long.
they are?
And
they hit it out of the park in just about every draft pick, too, which is, another thing you need.
Mm-hmm.
Buck Martinez is our Blue Jays analyst on Sportsnet. He is in Baltimore. 6:35 will be the first pitch tonight. It'll be a good one. Should be a good one. José Berríos against Corbin Burns. Buck joins us next. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590 The Fan at Sportsnet. Hey, welcome back to Blair and Barker for a Monday. 6:35 is the first pitch tonight from Camden Yards in Baltimore. The Orioles taking on the Blue Jays. The first of 3 games. A reminder, Wednesday's game is a 12:35 first pitch, and Blair and Barker will be doing Blue Jays talk following that
Woohoo!
game.
Winning edition.
Winning edition.
Ooh,
Well, that's
that.
Wednesday. Now, the weather may not be. The weather may not be good.
So you're talking about tonight.
We will be doing Blue Jays talk tonight as well following the game. And speaking of the game, we are very pleased, as we always are, to be joined by our next guest. He is Buck Martinez.
He's my favorite.
He is mine, too. He is a Blue Jays analyst at Sportsnet, and he is live in Baltimore. How's the weather, first of all, Buck? I always feel I need to ask that in Baltimore.
It is spectacular. Not a cloud in the sky. And the Orioles are out doing their calisthenics, getting ready. And the Blue Jays hit earlier. The Orioles have hit already. And we're going to have another round of batting practice. But it's spectacular. I mean, literally spectacular right now.
Buck, have you seen the Jays lineup? Who's leading off? Have you seen that?
Yeah, that was the second question. I figured I'd get that one as the first question.
See, I arranged that with Barker ahead of time. I said, you ask him about the lineup this time. I'm tired of asking him about the lineup.
Oh, boy.
You guys are too easy to read. No, I haven't seen the lineup yet. It's not been out yet. And you know what? Everybody say, I don't know how many options John has. David Snyder, of course, he hit lead off, and that caused everybody to get excited. But, there aren't too many real leadoff hitters here anyway. And, as a matter of fact, he leads off one time in the game. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, we need somebody to hit better than George is hitting right now. And George needs to hit a little bit better like he has in the past, and same for Bo. But, you can't change the personnel overnight. These are the guys they have, and they're going to have to hit it. They're going to get it done.
Buck, whenever you were managing around the game forever, you saw guys struggling the way George has been struggling? Bo looks like he's starting to turn the corner a little bit, just point of contact and hitting the ball to right center on the line. But with George, is there sort of a piece of advice you could ever give somebody like that? Is there something you're seeing with George that could tell you that, he's close to turning this around? I think he swings too much. I think sometimes when you struggle, I struggled forever. I tried to hit everything. You can't do that. It just makes it worse. Maybe tone that down a little bit and just sort of hone in on specific things. Is there something you're seeing that you think would make George better?
Kevin, I had this conversation with Carlos Santana over the weekend in Toronto talking about the experienced hitter. He says, when you're a young hitter, you think you have to hit everything. Mm-hmm. And then the more experience you get, you understand that you only need to hit one pitch. And, I think when you go through this, and believe me, I'm the master of struggling. I struggled my whole career.
Me too.
So, you try different bats. I mean, I looked at my bat order record not long ago, and my God, I must have ordered every bat Louis has ever made.
That's awesome.
You always try different things, but for a guy like George, I mean, he knows himself better than anybody. And obviously, you get to a point where you just kind of get frustrated and say, well, I got to get it simple again. And I've said this on the air. I've said this publicly. I've said it privately. I think they got too many thoughts in their mind as a team. As an industry, I think that's true. The industry OPS is under 700. Mm-hmm. And people keep talking about it. And now this new stat came out today, which I absolutely hate. Bat swing speed. Okay? Tell me what that does. You know who has the slowest bat swing speed?
Arise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know who's one of the best hitters in baseball?
Arise.
Mm-hmm. And you know who his coach was? Rod Carew.
Yeah.
Not a surprise. But you know what? We try to make all of these things so analytical and so numbers oriented, they get overloaded. You know, Kevin, think back to when you were a kid. When you were a kid, you went to a high school game, you got off the bus, you stepped on the field, you looked at the other teams and said, geez, I don't know any of those guys. But you got some hits, didn't you?
Yeah.
You didn't have to look at video. You didn't have to have a radar gun. You didn't have to see what his spin rate was. You just figured out when he throws the ball at me, I'm going to hit it somehow. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And I think we got too much information. Just because you can figure something out doesn't mean it's going to help you. Just because you can identify speed rate or break or horizontal break and all that stuff, that doesn't mean it's going to help you hit. You have to figure out a way to get the barrel of the bat on the baseball, and I think the industry in general has way too much information.
Buck, we know that Vladdy, we're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel, I think, with Vladdy, is, you know, you and Danny talked about it. What you need to see now is some of those singles become doubles, the ball get into the air more. But at least if somebody said to me, hey, you know what, Vladdy could go off this week, I'd go, yeah, I can see it. How close do you think Bo is to being where Vladdy is?
I think Bo's close. I mean, the thing with Bo, it's so difficult to see because he has such an unorthodox swing.
Right.
I mean, Kevin, you've seen this. I mean, he hits balls that nobody else can get to, and in the past, he hits them hard. Well, right now, he's just not doing that. And you can't, I mean, to me, his swing doesn't look any different than it has the last couple of years. It looks kind of like the same. He's always aggressive. He's always thinking about hitting. You know, people want to say, hey, Bo, but you should take a few more pitches. Bo's never taken pitches in his life. And he's always been able to hit with 2 strikes. And he's always been able to handle any kind of velocity and to hit balls that other people can't get to. I don't know what's going on with him at the plate. I mean, to identify, you know, people say, well, how would you pitch to Bo right now? I said, I'd just be careful, keep it out in the middle of the plate, and then hope that he has chased more off the plate this year, I think, than he has in the past. And I think that's a bit of a problem. But, I mean, this guy's always hit, and it's just baffling to figure out why he's not hitting right now.
Buck, do you see anything with Eric Swanson?
I think it's just a little stretch where he's going through maybe a lack of confidence and some doubt. I don't care who you are. When you have a little doubt in your mind, you're going to be tentative when you throw a particular pitch. And you know what? They've got him so aware. Well, he's hiding the ball, he's tipping the ball and all that stuff. You know, Jack Morris used to tell us, we say, hey, Jack, I got your pitches. He said, I don't care. You can't hit them.
It sounds like Jack.
I mean, you know, sometimes we get too wrapped up in, you know, well, they got my pitches. Well, then make good pitches and they won't hit them. And I think that's been the problem. I think the bullpen's problem in general is the fact they've made too many mistakes out over the heart of the plate. And, you know, coming into this season, we heard a lot about, well, this pitching staff can pitch better than it did last year. Man, that's hard to do because they were so good last year. Rotation, bullpen, from one man to the next, they were all really good. And to recreate that in the second year, that's hard to do. That's why bullpens are turned over so frequently, because you just don't expect them to be that good, that consistently, that many years in a row. So, yeah, it was hard to expect them to be better than they were last year, but certainly we'd like to see them get back to a little bit more of the norm than they are right now. You know, literally the only guy that's really been consistent all year is Jimmy Garcia. But, you know, Swanson and Romano were late getting started. Meza was down early in his velocity and his movement, but he seems to straighten things out a little bit. But, yeah, as an entire pitching staff, it hasn't been a great start for their season.
Buck, I want to just shift focus a little bit here. We are going to see the Orioles, obviously, over the next 3 days. And, you know, we've had, in the past couple of days, we've had a couple of former GMs on and other baseball people. And we've kind of asked the question, okay, the Orioles have all these good young players coming up. How do you play this if you're the Orioles? At some point, you're going to have to probably decide to commit to one of these players, maybe in a Bobby Witt type of a deal. From where I am, you know, Gunnar Henderson's a terrific player, but obviously, but from where I am, it's got to kind of start with Adley Rutschman. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Since Rutschman's come up back in 2022, he came up late in May that season, they have not been swept in a series, which is incredible. And, yeah, I mean, he's the leader. He's the captain. He's the guy that makes everything happen behind the plate. And, Yeah, I mean, you know what's really interesting, and I just thought this was something. They have 2 guys signed a multi-year contract right now. 2.
Yeah.
And, one of them is James McCann, and he signed that contract with somebody else, and the other one is Felix Bautista, and he's hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So they have done a terrific job of clearing the decks for now this next step. And I think by the end of this season, and certainly in the offseason, they're going to sign Gunnar Henderson and Natalie Richmond and these guys. And then now they have enough proof to say these guys are legit. Not only are they good offensive players, they're good defensive players, and they're great teammates. So those are the types of things you look for when you're going to commit multi-year contracts. And I would expect they sign both of these guys, especially because of the new ownership here in Baltimore.
Buck, do you think the Blue Jays playing a good team, if not a great team, and the Orioles could help them down the stretch here, or sort of get them off to a little bit of a momentum stretch and, really get them to hone in on what they're not doing well so, they maybe could go on a little streak here?
Well, Kevin, I think that's a great point. And I think, too, that if you are what the Blue Jays are supposed to be, these are the games you look forward to.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Orioles are out in front, The only team that's better than the Orioles right now in baseball are the Phillies. And the only team that's better than the Orioles for the last 2 years are the Atlanta Braves. So, yeah, this is the cream of the crop. This is a very good team and a very young team and a multidimensional team that plays defense. They pitch, they hit, they run the bases. They got more home runs than anybody in baseball. And, yeah, if you're the Blue Jays, I mean, if you have any pride at all, this is when you're going to step up and say, you know what, we're not going to be the doormat for the American League East. We are better than that. And we saw signs of that on Saturday, and we thought that would carry over to Sunday, but it didn't. So this is a real gut check and an important series because Friday, Tampa Bay rolls right into Rogers Center once again. So you just have to focus on this game, do everything you can as a coaching staff, as a team, as a bunch of players to win this game tonight and develop some momentum. Berríos has been terrific this season outside of his start last time out, and he's always pitched well against the Orioles. So he's only lost 1 time, and he's 10-1 in his career against Baltimore. So hopefully he'll get them off to a good start. And he's matched up against Corbin Burns, who's only pitched once in his career against the Blue Jays. So we'll see. But that's a good point, Kevin, that, this is a test, and this is a real test for a team that's struggling right now.
Yep.
Last question from us before we let you run. You talked about José Berríos. His last outing against the Phillies had an awful lot of difficulties with their left-handed hitters, who are very good, I might add. What does he have to do differently tonight against the Orioles, Buck? Or I guess let me rephrase that. What issues will the Orioles present to him tonight?
Well, the whole thing, Adley Rutschman was 10 for 16 against the Berríos, and he's hit everything. I went back and looked at all of his at-bats. He's hit sliders, he's hit sinkers, he's hit changeups, he's hit home runs and doubles and singles. But the outing last time out, he ran into the Phillies, who were red hot. But for the season, he's pitched very well against left-handed hitters. His numbers are much better against lefties than they are against righties, and I think that speaks to how well he's commanded his two-seam fastball, both inside and outside, and thrown his changeup. So I think those pitches are going to be important. And I don't care who you are, how hard you throw. If you execute good pitches and sequence your pitches very effectively, you can beat anybody. And I think that's what he has to do, and that's what he was doing. That's why he was the American League Pitcher of the Month in April. He just has to execute his pitches. I know he's pitching with a lot of confidence, and I don't think he's going to have any hangover from that last outing against Philly. And I expect him to be good tonight.
Buck, we're going to let you scoot, man. Thanks for doing this.
That's
Terrific
awesome.
Insight as always.
Thanks, Buck.
All right. Good to talk to you guys.
See you later.
It's Buck Martinez, Blue Jays analyst on Sportsnet from Baltimore. The Orioles lineup is out. It is Henderson, Rutschman, O'Hearn, Mountcastle, Santander, Cowser, Westberg, Mullins, and Mateo. So you're looking at 1,
6
2,
lefties.
3. You're looking at 2 switch hitters and 4 left-handed hitters. The Orioles also have made a move. They've DFA'd Ryan McKenna today to create a roster spot for Austin Hayes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to create a spot for Austin Hayes, who's coming off the 10-day
They're oozing
IL.
talent, man. Yeah, it's just a plethora of it.
And as we mentioned, Heston Kierstad has been optioned to AAA.
It's a good test.
And Kyle Stowers.
Jay's been kicked in the mouth. Seriously, like being in last place. I mean, I said this a couple of days ago about, getting your head out of that place. It's time. Like, it's time. This is the part of the season where you're playing a couple of good teams here. You're arguably playing one of the, if not the best team in the American League. Like, you can have some good at-bats. You can grind. You can make a good pitch when you're supposed to. Catch the balls that you're supposed to catch. Like, really put an emphasis on doing your job to the fullest against a good team, because you know you got to. If you don't, they're going to beat you, and you're going to get embarrassed. Who wants to be embarrassed, Jeff? So I think this is the part of the schedule. I mentioned 16 games, 12-4. You're 30-26.
Yeah.
Me and you going to come on here and say and talk differently about the Blue Jays. Like, you got a little stretch here where if you grind and fight and claw, be 4-2 against the next two teams, and in those next 10 games, you should get healthy. So fingers crossed they figure it out. Dudes pitch the way they're supposed to and get some timely hits.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the
decisions.
lineup, by the way.
George, is it okay if I put you down in the order?
George, can you please move down?
Are you sick, George?
Pretty please. What can we do, George?
That's rude. I shouldn't say. We shouldn't say that.
Yeah. No, we shouldn't.
We shouldn't say that. We're more poking fun at that.
Yeah. We are, but look, I mean, it's a talking point.
If you're trying to sell us team would mean a dude with a OPS of 560 ain't leading off. That ain't team. I don't care who's leading off. You lead off in Varsho would be decent.
Mm-hmm.
Schneider, okay. Not George. Not right now. Let him go down there and try and figure it out. Maybe taking a little pressure off of him, and where he's not slumping, holding his head down when he hits a lollipop line drive to left. Like, he's making $25 million. He's the highest paid guy on the team, Jeff. It's like, yeah. There you go.
What do you think about Buck's take on the bullpen was interesting, and the pitching in general, about how so much of the discussion in spring training was, boy, as good as it was last year, it could be even better this year. And you were the one who pointed out, well, actually, you know what? It could be worse because they're older. They had a lot. This organization had a lot go for it last year in terms of pitching.
No question.
Guys stayed healthy. Mm-hmm. They survived Manoah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They survived Manoah and more.
Mm-hmm.
The bullpen, they
didn't pitch a lot. No.
They had a lot of things really fall into place. And I wonder when we look back in this offseason that in addition to focusing on the lack of moves that were made around the lineup, I wonder if at some point we're also going to look at the bullpen and say, they have too much faith.
I don't know if it's
faith in guys.
I don't know if it's faith. I think that's why you should have went out and tried to fix your lineup. Add a few more pieces that could carry it.
Do you think when they acquired Jordan Hicks last year, do you think they did so with the intention of possibly re-signing him? Like, it wasn't until the end of the year, it wasn't until late in the year where he told Pete Walker he wanted to start.
I think they knew he wanted to start.
Do you think they knew he wanted to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've often wondered.
Make more money start.
I mean, I've often wondered about that this year, and I wouldn't go back and I'm not saying I'd go back and redo it. I mean, clearly there wasn't going to be a role for him as a starter.
I think they were thinking they're going to score more than 3.5 runs a game. That will hide some woes that they got in the pen. Yeah. And Pete Walker, again, it's the Manoah thing, right? Aim big. Like, make the target bigger for him to have a better chance of keeping it in the strike zone. I mean, it's little things like that, right, that can make a staff better and give a lineup a chance to have a big inning. That's what I said. It's just little things like getting out of the way and allowing momentum. It gets back to that Gibby thing. Every once in a while, I just did it so I didn't have to answer the question. Sounds too simple.
6:35 is the first pitch tonight. That is it for us. Blair and Barker doing Blue Jays talk following the game. My guess is the Jays are going to probably send their lineup out about 2 minutes after we get off the air. Think it's intentional? I don't know about that. Enjoy the baseball. We'll chat again tomorrow.